Welcome, everyone. Wow, the sound in this room is much better than other rooms. Wow. I had another talk in the morning in another room, and I would say this is prestigious, very nice. Good to see you back again. So this is a lightning talk, which means I need to talk a bit faster, and you should not really expect me talking too much in details. So, however, I touch a topic which is very controversial, and a lot of time, well, a lot of people have different opinion, of course. We're going to get into this. I'm going to look at this topic from a different angle. Maybe an angle that you haven't seen, hopefully, and you will learn something from it. Mono-repo, generally, and then specifically in Dart and maybe Flutter. So let's take a look at that. So what is the problem? Let's quickly review together in 1 minute. When we have a poly-repo style, multiple repositories, and we have one mono-repo, everything there. So the problem many times relays on, well, different aspects. In one company could be teams are too big that talking to each other is hard. So mono-repo may solve this problem, may not. So poly-repo is good, mono-repo is bad, or the other way around. It just all depends on all the problems that we're going to solve, right? There are way different types of problems that we can talk about it right now. But I bet if I start, you all can relate. But this is something that we're going to talk about it today. So when to use mono-repo, when to use poly-repo, and what you need to really have to have a good mono-repo if you want to start that path. My name is Majid. I am head of DevRel at Invertis and also a Flutter community leader. And it's a pleasure to be here to talk to you about mono-repo. So let's quickly figure out, first of all, what's the definition between mono-repo and poly-repo? Can someone tell me what is poly-repo? Many repositories. And mono-repo is one repository. Well, technically this is correct, but generally we should agree that when you split off your application into different chunks and then you separate them differently, you keep them different other places. Maybe sometimes your team owns it, or maybe they don't own it, depends. So that's somehow a poly-repo, right? When you get them under one umbrella and you give ownership of specific part of it to a team, could be a mono-repo. There is one important misconception about mono-repo, and sometimes people think that mono-repo is monolith. It's not the same. You can technically have a modular approach or a monolith under a mono-repo. That's a different story. We're going to talk about mono-repo, which is a way of organizing this stuff mostly, and a lot more, which we're going to talk about it right now. But there is one fact about my slides. There are a couple of photos and pictures which I made it with generative AI just to make it look like fun. This is supposed to be coding in rabbit hole. Well, this was the best version of it. But we're going to go down to the rabbit hole of whether mono-repo is good or bad. Who is saying mono-repo is good? Who is saying it's bad? Well, I mean, good and bad depends. I have a famous quote in Flutter community that I always say it depends. I learned it very hard when I was software architect back in my career a couple of years ago. Software architects usually never tell you this is good or bad. They say it depends. And this is actually a fact. So you can't really say mono-repo is good for me or bad for me. But then how can you recognize whether it's good for you or bad for you? And that's what we're going to talk about it right now. So one thing I want to mention is about Conway's law. Anyone knows about Conway's law? Oh, that's good, so I can explain it very well. So Conway's law technically says your organization structure is somehow related to the way that you build software. Like if you are building a software that has accounting or some kind of API service or whatever, your organization can kind of map that. And it's an unavoidable, let's say, way to do it. So the point that I want to make here is you can't really make a mono-repo without changing the structure of your company. Sometimes you need to do that. Otherwise, you get to a point that people say, oh, I don't own this. This is not mine. This is not my code. This is for that team. How many of you have seen these conversations in your company? I bet those have worked in like enterprise organization, multiple teams, have seen that. I've seen that myself many times. A couple of years ago, we've been building a design system, sharing the code across, well, entire team in the company. How many teams? I don't know, 50 teams of 10 people. It was a big company. In different countries. Every time we had a commit, someone was complaining, oh, you broke my code. So, well, that was a poly-repo and lots of other things around. We started thinking like, you know, maybe there is a better way. Maybe we should think it differently. If you want to do a mono-repo, which means we're going to bring the teams under one umbrella, well, there should be some barriers between team, of course. Autonomous team, it's a thing in companies. If you want to make the team autonomous, we should give them ownership as well, so they can do whatever they want. But if you come to a mono-repo, then things are a little bit different. They may not be able to do everything they want. So, but at the end of the day, if we think carefully about mono-repo, there are definitely advantages and as well as disadvantages. Let's quickly touch that, and then I go through a little bit of feature detection in mono-repo. First of all, one thing that mono-repo can solve and be helpful is collaboration. When you have this mono-repo, you download one single source repository, you see like everything there, you get a better understanding of overall like how this software works. One of the most important advantages, to my opinion, is having control over your dependencies. It's not like one team is using a package with 3 major versions behind another application, which is 2 versions ahead of that. So that could be a good problem to solve. Refactoring usually is better, so you're using a package in one application, you touch that, then you need to fix it. You are responsible because you're touching your code, all right? That's good, but there are many problems as well. Like one of the disadvantages is people are complaining, is saying that, well, the operation of the Git or source control might be slow. When I have a big repository and you're hearing like, oh, Google has a mono-repo, Netflix has mono-repo, but how can they manage this? Like if someone is hired in Google, they download like 10 terabytes of mono-repo, I bet they have a big mono-repo. There are different ways. There are better ways to manage that, right? So my point here is, it's not like you should create a mono-repo and just use Git and say, oh, we build a mono-repo, and then 10 months later, oh, this is super slow. We can't really clone, There are also issues regarding pipelines. You touch one thing in mono-repo, you build your CI/CD is triggering, and then suddenly you see everything is building again. Okay, that's not what I want. I just touched this tiny code in this package, but then I'm actually building everything. Is that necessary? Versioning, I'm actually like, okay, I'm gonna bump a package version, and then suddenly I see like other packages are dependent, And it's hard to kind of manage and follow these versioning. How should I bump my version right now? Is it going to be a major release or minor? Or if it's major, am I going to break someone else's code in this mono-repo? Because someone else probably is going to do something here. So the fact about broken master, like, oh, if I broke master, that means technically I'm breaking everything. Or my IDE is now lagging is just because I have too many things to clone. Do I need to clone everything? Well, that's again created by generative AI. However, it's a good picture. I like it. It's talking about having good tools for building good software. You're going to build a good software, but if you don't have a good tools here, you ended up having this type of machine, which you don't expect, but it happens. All right, well, that's good. But then how can we recognize what is the good tools? Let's talk about different tools in mono-repo space. There are multiple approaches. Specifically, I'm going to talk about Bazel from Google. That's technically the tools that they are running their mono-repo with. A bit complicated, very advanced. And then we have another one, which I like personally, is the NX one. NX is well known in JavaScript community, but it doesn't mean it's necessary for JavaScript. In fact, in Invertase, we built a bridge, NX Dart. You can actually use NX for Dart as well. I leave the investigation to you later to take a look at Bazel and NX for Dart and Flutter. There are multiple examples. But there's another one that we built in Invertase named Melos. Many of you perhaps are familiar. I'm just going to show some demo of Melos. But my point of the talk is, I think, is this slide. When I talk about mono-repo, these are the features that you're expecting from a tool. When we're talking about local computation caching or local or distributed computer caching, we're talking about, like, I run for the first time a script in my mono-repo, everything is set up, cool, but then next time I run it, I do not expect to run this script for 10 more minutes. There should be some kind of caching that caches my scripts that I run, okay? So it's the local task orchestration and distributed one means technically you're gonna make sure your tool is running your execution script both in different order as well as in parallel on your machine as a developer, as well as distributed system. It means other machines somewhere in the cloud. But it should give you like a local development experience. So one of the things that is very important that you need to figure out, and when you find a good tools, is detecting affected projects and packages. So when you build a mono-repo, you're gonna have multiple apps, multiple repositories, all right? So now you're gonna touch one of the packages and you're gonna run a test. The tool should help you only run the test for a specific part of the app that you are using this package, as well as the package itself. If you're running the test and it runs everything, you're doing something wrong. Maybe this is not a tool that you should use. So it's also about versioning. I'm touching multiple packages. I change one version. I need to clearly see what needs to be changed in which app and what part, then I build that particular part. I should not start building the entire or trigger the entire CDCI. So when I want to clone my application, I should be able to even clone part of my application. You're using maybe Git submodule, maybe other things that you are familiar with. So, and then that particular workspace needs to have a good analysis. Linting and everything should be in place by that particular tool. A good integration with IDE is also a key. So there are Other aspects, for example, take a look at the graph of the dependencies. So when you use one package in another application, or maybe using different packages into each other, a visualization here would help. What if you have the code generation into your tool as well? Like you want to create, let's say, packages, you just run with the tool in a right place to create that template of the package, or maybe a class, or maybe a widget, whatever. So the templating can, or code generation should be done or can be done by the tool. A couple of years ago, I had a talk about domain-driven design and how we can use DDD in architecting Flutter applications. And one of the things that I was talking about is, or was, splitting your application into smaller pieces. There are, again, this is a little bit controversial. Some people say, oh, why would you do that? If you are a team of 5 people, maybe you should not do that. But if you are an organization of 30,000 developers, maybe you should start thinking about something. Or even if you have like 50 developers, you have a problem of sharing the code between your teams. You should start thinking about that. But if you're a team of 3 people, just do whatever you want. Just get the product out. Let people test your product. You can test in production as well. That's what we do. So in that talk, I mentioned that you can split your application into smaller pieces, and actually mono-repo, like making your application modular. For example, creating just a piece of your app into an order module, which is giving an API out to another module. You just use the public API of your package into another package, which means if you change the underlaying of the order package, you're not going to actually change, you don't really touch any other things in the API level because other packages are using the same API still. But you could refactor the entire package without touching public API. This is a good example of creating your application into mono-repo, like creating these modules into different chunks. How many of you are building an application that you have a feature plan to build maybe a dashboard for client later with the same code base? And you're thinking maybe you can fork your existing Flutter application somehow, or maybe reusing some of the things that you are creating. Some of you probably are sharing code via Git. So you push a repository, you download it from Git because, well, the other team is in another country maybe, and they're just doing their own thing. These are the times that we should start thinking about, oh, can we do a little bit better here? Yeah, we can. So now let's talk about Melos. So we have Bazel from Google. This is a fantastic tool. It supports so many things out of the box. It's a bit difficult to set up in a smaller project. So we started thinking like we needed Melos because of big projects such as Flutter Fire, or Flame is using that, or other product as well, or repositories. There was no good package to handle mono-repo somehow in Dart, especially when we didn't have package override. So it was such a headache to run multiple packages under one mono-repo. So Melos was trying to solve one of the issue of mono-repo, which was package override. So you are doing development in local host or like your local machine. However, when you push it for Dart or pop.dev or you want to deploy, you don't really care about paths. Everything is handled. So I'm just going to quickly show you one example here in 1 minute. I cloned one of the biggest repositories, which is Flame. when you have Melos, you're gonna have a Melos YAML file which let you write your scripts, your commands, and technically your scripts can handle different command line. By the way, it doesn't need to be necessarily Dart. You can even run, if you have, let's say, a tiny layer in JavaScript, you want to kind of get it into your Mono-repo. You still can do that. So you can run this via Melos though. You can just run with npm. Get your script here, do a bunch of stuff that you want to do. So take a look at this here. So we have different packages. So the docs are here, examples are here, packages are here. And take a look at these packages. There are multiple packages. One thing I want to show you is, which is important, maybe I can go to my command line. Technically, I can create a graph dependencies, which is one of my favorite features. Still some work to do, but let's take a look at that. Sorry. This is a kind of tool you need to have, especially if this tool is integrated with your IDE. So you quickly take a look and see, oh, you know, I actually created this package which is dependent on another package. Or it just at the end all depends on like Flutter Flame lint package. I see clearly the connection between my dependencies. And this is what I'm talking about when I talk about workspace analysis and workspace, let's say, visualization. This is very important to think about. So this is the kind of tool you should have under your hand if you really want to go to the path of Mono-repo. So again, that was a short talk just to inspire you. Not too much details, but I'm happy to answer your question just outside of this door. If you have a very specific one about Mono-repo, you did it, you failed it, and you're back again to Polyrepo. How many of you have done that? None of you, that's good. But then you can try Mono-repo right now. Thank you very much.